Hey, what is up guys, and welcome to an in-depth review on The Outer Worlds, a game that feels like the Fallout experience we never got in the case of Fallout 76, and maybe even Fallout 4 depending on what type of character you wanted to play. For those of you who just want the quick version, it is essentially New Vegas in space with better gunplay and fantastic companions. If that's something that interests you, I'd say jump right in, you really can't go wrong. For the rest of you who need a bit more convincing though, let's start by diving into the visuals. Obviously, The Outer Worlds does not have the latest and greatest graphics on the market. In fact, they're far from it. But I honestly think that you would be doing yourself a disservice if you let that stop you, as the game features an incredibly unique art style that allows its universe to feel like the perfect mashup of sci-fi, western, and post-apocalyptic. Each location, especially when it comes to the more prominent towns, feels distinctly different from one another, while at the same time, managing to maintain that sense of being owned by greedy corporations in a way that ties the universe together. Obtrusive adverts, obnoxious vending machines, and other corporate-owned products blanket the many dystopian worlds in a way that palpably alludes to who's really running the show. What's cool is that many of the choices you make throughout the story have consequences that end up affecting how some of these locations look. Diverting power from one settlement to another, for example, might force the people in the now powerless town to huddle around a fire for warmth. And similar to the Borderlands series, they've done a great job at making sure that many of the different weapon lines have consistent styles based on their manufacturers, with Spacer's Choice firearms looking rather industrial, and T&L weapons going for more of that Wild West vibe. Really, the only issue here visually is that textures can sometimes take a while to load in whenever you enter a new area. But other than that, it's a very creative visual experience that manages to pull off some pretty gorgeous scenes despite not being much of a technical marvel. And with that said, let's move on to the gameplay. In a nutshell, The Outer Worlds is nothing short of a true RPG. It's a game that prevents you from mastering everything, while in turn allowing you to do just about anything. You'll begin the game by figuring out who you are with what I would say is a fairly respectable character creator. It's not as fine-tuned as in a game like Fallout 4, but it's a great deal better than its predecessors like 3 and New Vegas. It's here that you'll choose your attributes, skills, and even your aptitude, which is essentially the profession your character had before getting put into cryosleep. What I love about the skill system in The Outer Worlds is that you don't have to start specializing in specific traits until you reach level 50 in the broader categories like ranged or leadership, giving you time to figure out what you actually enjoy using before having to decide which individual skills you want to focus on. Throughout the game, completing difficult tasks and getting to where you need to go can be handled in a variety of different ways. Techies may find it easiest to hack their way into places, whereas smooth talkers might favor the persuasive approach. Of course, if you just feel like killing every single person who gets in your way, you have that option as well, even when it comes to the more essential NPCs. Similar to New Vegas and perhaps even more akin to the recent Kingdom Come Deliverance, The Outer Worlds features a proper disguise system, which, provided you have the correct ID cartridge for that area, allows you to modulate you and your companion's appearances for a certain amount of steps using a holographic shroud. If you get stopped after the disguise wears off, you'll be forced to talk your way out in order to reset the shroud and avoid being found out. Overall, it's a very cool adaptation on a pre-existing system that fits well within the genre. Albeit far from fantastic, combat in The Outer Worlds is a massive improvement over Obsidian's older games. Not only does the gunplay feel smoother, but you, as well as each of your companions, have your own unique abilities that help mix things up, such as time dilation or Felix's ability to drop-kick enemies into oblivion. Not to mention, there are a bunch of upgrades that you can find for your weapons and armor, which not only change the stats, but also alter their appearances, making it really easy to kit your entire crew out with a unified look that still allows each individual person to stand out in their own way. Speaking of standing out, perhaps one of the more innovative gameplay elements in The Outer Worlds is its flaw system. Essentially, whenever the game picks up on the fact that you're struggling with a certain type of enemy or damage type, it provides you with a one-time opportunity to accept a flaw, like robophobia for example, granting you with a perk point at the cost of negative effects such as reduced dexterity when facing that type of enemy. Now, don't get me wrong, this system was an awesome idea from a roleplay perspective. However, I think it could have been done even better if rather than providing you with a perk point, they instead had both positive and negative trade-offs, like the traits available in New Vegas, as the perks in this game are somewhat lackluster compared to the ones offered in the Fallout series. Nevertheless, it's nice to see innovations like these still arising within the genre even if they aren't perfect the first time around. The sheer variety of mission types in The Outer Worlds was another aspect I rather enjoyed. One moment you and your crew could be engaged in a dangerous heist, and the next you might be acting as the starring role in a movie. At no point in this game does it ever feel like you're stuck doing the same things over and over. Even when it comes to what some might deem the game's fetch quests, there always seems to be some kind of twist or turn that keeps things interesting. Not to mention, choices during missions are often morally gray, meaning rather than picking a good or bad option, you're usually stuck choosing what you view as the lesser of two evils, or greater depending on your character. And I dug that because it helped add some much needed weight to your decisions. With the gameplay covered though, let's check out the sound.
Please, clear the roadway. Obstruction of commerce is punishable by a fine of no less than 10,000 bits.
So, what can I do for you? My full attention is at your disposal.
Captain, I would caution that we tread carefully through the remaining morass of this encounter for the safety of all involved.
While I approve of your associate's cautious nature, I still teeter on the verge of losing my patience. Let us move forward with the present proceedings.
Oh, but there's nothing you can do. I hope you've paid your burial fees and signed your personal death and dismemberment waivers, because this is the end for you.
Stop! It's make-believe!
He's really shooting! Safety's off!
That didn't work! You got him! Stay practicing this!
Someone calling the janitor auto mech. And you, Captain Baby, you were great.
So, despite the rest of the game being pretty phenomenal, the sound department was one of the few places that the Outer Worlds struggled a bit. That's not to say it was all bad, but more so that it got some things really well, and others not so much. The soundtrack, for instance, is incredibly cool. There were small hints of the Mojave Wasteland in there, as well as this entirely new, almost alien feel to it that was very mysterious and fit perfectly with the unexplored nature of space. Voice acting in the Outer Worlds was equally captivating, which is a huge feat considering just how much dialogue this game has. Take the Spacer's Choice vendor for instance. He's only a minor NPC, but I must have been able to ask him what felt like 50 different questions all surrounding his hat.
Damn it. No slogan for that one. Look, this hat, my job. It may not seem like much to a brave space captain, but they're all that I have. If there are self-made purgatories, then we all have to live in them. Mine can be no worse than someone else's. Now, if we're done with the chit-chat, I hope you don't mind if I make the most of this short life and try to be the best moon person I can be.
And thanks to the game's wonderful writing, even those longer back and forths are a joy to listen to, and can often be quite funny as well. Settlement ambience, on the other hand, is entirely devoid of life. Most of the time you'll be walking through a town and see settlers gathered around talking to each other, but you won't actually hear anything unless you get super close or look directly at them. It adds this strange and ghostly contrast to these hubs, which visually appear very lived in. And things like enemy footsteps are also way too quiet, making it damn near impossible to hear bad guys rushing you from behind during combat, which otherwise feels nice and chaotic, with a variety of different weapon sounds and panic shouts from NPCs. Overall, the impressive highs are nothing to gloss over. However, in a similar sense, the dissatisfying lows still end up holding this experience back a bit in the end. And now, without mentioning any spoilers, let's move on to the story. Your journey in the Outer Worlds begins as you awake decades after you were supposed to aboard a colonist ship located on the outskirts of the Halcyon Cluster, a colony owned and operated by corporations. Set in the midst of a conspiracy aimed at destroying the entirety of the colony, the fate of Halcyon is ultimately in your hands, as you take on the role of Captain of the Unreliable. And while that part is relatively set in stone, the rest of who you were and who you decide to become is entirely up to you. I, for instance, decided to play the game as a witty gunslinger, but you could just as easily assume the role of a corporate enthusiast, the world's dumbest engineer, or a stealthy pacifist who doesn't kill a single person. And The Outer Worlds does an excellent job at making you feel as though you truly are the captain of this ragtag crew of lost souls, who are the game's companions. Which I personally enjoyed, since most of the time the roles seem like they're always reversed. But here you definitely feel like a bit of a Star-Lord or a Captain Mao, as these aren't your typical crew members or companions who are solely there to serve you and the game's story. They have their own goals and may even lie to you at times to see them through. And the game genuinely breathes a ton of life into them via rich backstories and the ways that they chime in whenever they have an opinion on a location you're going through or a big decision you have to make, a la Fallout 4 for example. Except I might argue that they're done even better here given just how much they have to say, be it arguments with each other aboard your ship, or random NPCs out on the open road. In fact, there are characters here who have a history with each other that you'll never even know about, as well as lines of dialogue that you'll never get to hear unless you bring those specific companions along for that particular quest and choose that line of dialogue. The amount of missable content and different companion combinations they prepared for is borderline insane, but it makes this game ripe with replayability. And you know, sometimes that sense of replayability is nothing more than an illusion. But in the case of The Outer Worlds, you can almost guarantee that no two playthroughs will be alike. I really do mean that. And with that said, let's go ahead and give this game a final rating. For me, The Outer Worlds is a definite Game of the Year contender. It's got an awesome universe, brilliant writing, and like I said, a massive amount of replayability. And overall, hardly any bugs, landing it at a 9 out of 10 for me. It's really just a great example of what an RPG should be, and is no doubt a must-buy for fans of games like Fallout New Vegas, as well as the sci-fi genre in general. But anyways guys, that's gonna do it for this review, so thanks for watching, hopefully you found this video helpful, and as always, I will see you in the next one.